Here we are back with another video, another video by Marquez, and I wanted to put these back to back with each other, simply because I think they're relevant. The previous one that I made was why people don't buy Sony phones, and he used the Xperia One Mark II as the reason, showing off its capability, its design. And here he is talking about the Xperia One Mark III, and he calls it the perfect enthusiast phone. And I've watched this video quite a few times, and there aren't as many views on this particular one as there were on his video that he made probably about a year ago. I forget, the exact dates, but I watch it, and I've watched it several times, and it's just, he's definitely the king of YouTube tech videos. And I feel like well, I don't feel, I know there's some magic formula that you must use in order to get the most number of views by appealing to the most number of customers. So that way, he makes as much money as he does. I'm sure he's worth who knows how many millions of dollars right now. But the strategy he uses is the same strategy that any company would use when they're in the process of trying to appeal to the most number of people. And Sony doesn't do that for their cell phones. I'll caveat that because they have other devices that they sell, other products that are extremely profitable, whereas their cell phone division is not profitable at all. So we're gonna watch this video. I definitely have quite a few comments that I'll try to lay in there while we're watching it. But yeah, another great video, and yeah, just wanted to definitely share my opinions on it for my sake, really. And of course, if you're interested, I appreciate you listening.
Hey, what's up? I'm KBHD here, and I think Sony's finally done it. This mountain they've been climbing for all these years, they finally reached the top, and they've created the most enthusiast-targeted phone in the world. More than any gaming phone, more than any other niche phone. I recently made a video on why people don't really buy that many Sony phones. They've doubled down on all of that stuff since then. It's kind of a work of art. So I've been using this phone on and off for about a month now, and everything that you can think of that would make the ultimate enthusiast phone, they've done it. Sony's done it in this phone. Everything from the specs to the features to the details, it's all here. I mean, you can start all the way from the top with the name. It's the Xperia One 3. Good luck explaining that to your normal friends. And it was unveiled literally months ago in April, so
And right there, that's a bit of a misnomer because it's the Xperia One Mark III, letting you know it's the third generation of this line. Yes, they could have done something different instead of having so many numbers in there, but he said it correctly in his previous video that he even just referenced, to the Xperia One Mark III. So it's the third iteration of this particular branding of phone. So they have the Xperia One, the Xperia 5, and the Xperia 10. And all of them have three generations of their particular line. So it's Xperia One Mark III. And I still don't see how that has anything to do with it being an enthusiast design. They just, instead of it just being Xperia 1 and Xperia 2 and Xperia 3, they happen to use too many numbers. I will agree they could have made it a little more clear, but I'm pretty sure their cameras have some type of similar annotations, like the Alpha Series Mark 7 or 6 or whatever they're called. So definitely feel like they're bringing some of that naming scheme over to their cell phones.
you'd only know about it now that it's quietly actually gone on sale because you follow enough tech blogs or YouTube channels, because you certainly won't see any ads for it or find it in any carrier stores here. But then, just look at this design. I mean, you can probably already see some of the enthusiast features starting to stick out. It's kind of hard to know where to start, actually. So first of all, it has a super nice frosted matte black finish, and it's actually even kind of like a little bit of a soft touch that I really like. Even the sides are matte black, and the whole thing is built around this 21:9 aspect ratio, which an enthusiast would love, because now you can watch your 21.
Okay, so 21:9 aspect ratio. I think some Samsung devices now are 20:9. Like these phones are definitely no longer all just 16:9 or whatever they used to be. I and there's a lot of content I feel that isn't even in that aspect ratio. I mean, I'm sure there is, but I would assume the majority of content isn't. So I see where he's kind of coming from with, oh, only enthusiasts would like to watch stuff in that particular aspect ratio. But it also, uh, I don't know if I can completely agree with that. It's just the design that Sony happened to go along with. Um, it does allow for ultra wide stuff when you are watching things in portrait mode. It also allows you to handle the phone with one hand more easily compared to some of the phones with the same screen size but are shorter and then wider. So so yeah, I don't know if I can really get on board with calling it an enthusiast display aspect ratio.
by 9 videos on a proper cinema display with no black bars. But then let's just go down the feature list, okay? Dual SIM card tray at the top, removable without a tool, and the second SIM card tray actually doubles as expandable storage for those micro SD cards up to 1 TB. You're welcome, enthusiasts.
All right, so right there, the exact opposite of his mindset last year when he made that other video, and of course, I don't think I could disagree more. So here, I'm making this video in 2022, and I believe this video came out in 2021. But either way, having a toolless design to remove a SIM card, whether you need to remove it frequently or not, I think is just a better design while also maintaining waterproof or water resistance or whatever the term is. I would much rather be able to say, hey, I can just open this without having, without the need for the SIM card removal tray tool to even exist if we could just simply pop the SIM card tray open with our fingers. Also, having two SIM cards. There are plenty of people who just aren't even thinking about what an enthusiast would be when it comes to needing two SIM cards. Sometimes you might want one phone for work and one phone for personal, but if you're able to have two SIM cards and then you can put both SIM cards in there, I wouldn't want to do that. But in the event that you have two phone numbers for any particular reason, don't see why that makes it a particularly enthusiast level design. Not to mention the fact that a lot of phones now have eSIMs, so you can have one physical SIM and one eSIM, so you're still able to have two phone numbers tied to the same number. Not quite sure what makes that an enthusiast level design. Also, the micro SD card, up to 1 TB of storage. It's amazing that one would think that's an enthusiast level design when a couple years ago, we all used SD cards, and well, with the exception of the iPhone, which we all bitched about the iPhone never having one, and of course it'll never get one. But there's nothing wrong with having expandable storage. It doesn't make it an enthusiast design. It's just something that, and in fact, I feel a lot of Android phones, with the exception of Samsung, at least they're more expensive ones. I don't know about other ones, but it used to be just a standard feature. And I get as components get cheaper, it's easier for the manufacturers to place larger amounts of internal storage. So, I mean, we can easily go back to phones used to have 8, then maybe 16 and 32 and 64, gigs of storage, which keep in mind, the iPhone 12, which isn't the most recent phone, but just the previous one, the base model was 64 gigabytes of storage. Storage has gotten cheaper, so now they're able to add more and more to it, but there's still nothing wrong with having the ability to add more. And I wouldn't consider that an enthusiast because most of us are adding more storage. But how are we doing it? In the form of cloud storage, where the company, whether it's Apple or Google or whatever other cloud service you might be using, is able to charge you. So why not have the ability to just pay $50 or $20, whatever the cost would be for a decent size SD card, and you just pop that in, as opposed to having to rely on somebody's cloud storage solution. Again, doesn't really seem like an enthusiast level design, just seems like a good feature that if the phone is capable of doing it, or if the technology exists, why not utilize it? So dual SIM or single SIM with SD card up to 1 TB. None of that appears to be enthusiast. It just seems to be something that makes it a good phone.
There's stereo front-facing speakers flanking the edges of the phone, and they're nice and loud, louder than the previous generation, and far enough apart to create a nice, real stereo image. And then up in the corner, yeah, that's an LED.
Okay, so I stopped it a little bit too late right there, but he's naming things that he considers enthusiast level features, and stereo speakers that are front facing. That's just, again, a good phone. For the longest time, a lot of phones had the mono speaker, which was just on the bottom of the phone. So if you put your finger over the speaker grill, you'd muffle it. So you might have to either adjust the way your finger is or rotate the screens. That way now you're holding the top of the screen or the side of the screen where the speaker isn't located. And then now for those phones that do have dual or stereo speakers, one's still downward facing and the other one is frontward facing upwards towards the earpiece. So again, just not an enthusiast level feature. It's just a good product. And I get where he's coming from. I really do. But he almost sounds like he's speaking from the perspective of the manufacturers, like the other manufacturers. Or hey, yeah, we would make our phones like that, but we're appealing to the masses, and the masses don't want that. Only enthusiasts want that. Versus, hey, as a consumer, it's a nice feature. I wish more phones did that. I wish more phones had front-facing speakers. I wish more phones had SD card slots. I wish more phones had toolless SIM card removals. Toolless, the ability to remove the SIM card without needing the SIM card removal tool. So again, not really sure if I can get on board. And what he's about to mention, which he's pointing at on the screen right now, is the notification LED. So it flashes when you get a notification, it changes colors. I have the Xperia 5 Mark III, so not the 1 Mark III. And even though it's not my primary device, excuse me, it definitely is nice. Like right now, it's flashing red. I don't know what red means, but I can pick it up and see I have. Oh, it was an account notification type deal. But yeah, it's not an enthusiast thing. In fact, that LED has been on I think all the Sonys that I've had, which date back now 6 years, 6 maybe 7 years now, and it's an additional piece of hardware to implement. So it adds to the cost of the phone, but it also, in my opinion, just adds to the experience. Now, is it necessary? Absolutely not. Does it really add? I think I just said it adds to the experience, which it does. But does it substantially add to the experience? No, it doesn't. But in an era where we're constantly checking our phones, flipping them over, I remember I used to leave the phone just, face up. So that way I could see, hey, if that little light isn't blinking, I don't have any notifications. But with other phones, I mean, now we have always on displays, things like that. Shoot, even sometimes I wear my Apple Watch just so that I know I don't need to constantly be picking up my phone because I'll get the notification on my wrist. But it's just a nice feature. I mean, again, and I could say, okay, maybe that of everything he said so far, maybe I could concede to that being something for enthusiasts. But even if I would, I'd say, well, what's the true benefit of it aside from maybe not having to pick up your phone as frequently? Yeah, I don't know what else I could say about it. The other things he's mentioned so far are things that truly do add to the phone, but I wouldn't consider those to be enthusiast features.
D, notification light. The feature you really don't see in many features nowadays, but that enthusiasts will appreciate. And as I say that, you're probably already thinking about a headphone jack. So yeah, the headphone jack is up here too, up top. Feels like the phone is barely thick enough for it. And this one actually also has some extra buttons. So there's
Okay. So again, he's naming all the enthusiast level designs. The headphone jack was something that the country, if not the world, was pissed about when it was removed. Apple wasn't the first company to do it, I don't believe, but I feel like they were obviously the largest company to first do it. And Samsung ran their ads about their phone still having the headphone jack, and then I think deleted those ads off of YouTube when they too decided to remove the headphone jack. Sony, even though it's in this phone and it was in the previous phone, they removed it as well for either one or two, no, either two or three generations of their phones. But they brought it back because they realized, hey, it's a good feature to have. It's not an enthusiast level feature. It's something that had Apple never removed it, most people probably would still be using it. But it's just something nice to have. And do I use it all the time? No. I mean, I do have Bluetooth headphones. I conformed. I have a pair of the Sony WH 1003, whatever. the Bluetooth noise canceling ones. You know what I'm talking about. Not the most recent ones, because the fours have been out for a while, and they just, I think, either announced, if not released, the fives. But um, but yeah, the headphone jack is something that the entire country, if not world, was extremely upset about when it started departing phones. I mean, heck, we even talk about it now on laptops. Like, oh, this laptop still has a headphone jack. It's like, well, is that an enthusiast level design because it's on a laptop versus a smartphone? Like, no, it's not. It's just something that people would still use. And of course, we all know that. Well, and I'll just talk about Apple in particular. That, hey, yes, we took away the headphone jack because of courage. We caused a problem, but we will sell you a solution. Here are AirPods. And now AirPods, I believe, are the most popular headphone or truly wireless headphones. I don't know. They're extremely popular in the country and the world. So yeah, they caused a problem and then sold us a solution. I do not own any AirPods, but I do have some Google Pixel Buds, which are also, that's Google's version of truly wireless stuff. And they're cool. I use it mainly just to talk on the phone, not for music listening, and I'm only really doing it, yeah, like in the house and when I'm driving. Um, some people use those AirPods and stuff while they're working out. I personally just don't feel comfortable. A lot of them aren't, I don't think, are rated for water resistance or being waterproof the way that some might need when sweating. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but all that to say, the headphone jack is not an enthusiast level feature. It is just a nice to have, and unfortunately, in 2022, most manufacturers have done away with it.
Volume rocker up top, then the super reliable fingerprint reader power button combo underneath that, then a custom button that's mapped to trigger Google Assistant, then underneath that, a dedicated shutter button for the camera system. And it's got the half press for focusing and the full press for actually taking the shot and everything. All of that wrapped in a body that's IP68 water resistant and pretty squared off overall. Maybe a little bit of a boring design to some, but I like it. I really like it. It's the finish. It's the overall like pretty square aesthetic that I've liked in the past, but it's nice. The fingerprint reader on the power.
And you mentioned all those buttons. So the volume rocker, nothing enthusiast about that. All phones have them. The power button having the fingerprint reader integrated into it. Sony has been doing that for, I want to say for a while. So I don't know the first when they did it, but I had an Xperia X compact, and in the United States, the hardware was there for the fingerprint reader to work, but I think for some type of patent law issues, it was deactivated in this country. So if you wanted it to work, you needed to download firmware for, I think, the UK or whatever country spoke the language that you spoke, and it worked. And this was back in 2017. And again, not to say that it wasn't available before then, but yeah, it's nothing new. And of course, Apple does it now too. I mean, yeah, when Apple does it, it's, oh my God, Apple did it. They integrated into the power button for the iPads, and yeah, Apple does it. So not an enthusiast thing. Now there is a dedicated button for the Google Assistant, which I'm not going to pretend to know if other phones have that, which I'm certain some probably do somewhere. But I do know that Samsung devices at least attempted to have one of the buttons on one of their phones, if not multiple, dedicated exclusively for Bixby. And I think for a while you couldn't remap it. You might be able to now, but having a button dedicated to launching a voice assistant when you don't always want to use the wake word or whatever, kind of just seems like, hey, yeah, it's more hardware, but if we're able to integrate it into something like the power button, like a long press or something, that probably would be better. But yeah, having a dedicated button, yeah, still don't consider it enthusiast, because I don't know, are there enthusiast level Google Assistant users? Like, is that something that, oh man, I can't believe there's, I'm getting excited about the dedicated Google Assistant button. I mean, maybe there are people out there, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, also not an enthusiast level thing. The dedicated button for the camera, okay, I can concede. I mean, quick access to that versus maybe another phone that has, you triple press the power button and it automatically brings up the camera, or you can swipe from the home screen. Yeah, adding hardware for a dedicated a dedicated camera button. I could see that being for an enthusiast. Somebody who wants to pull the phone out quick, press and hold the button, and boom, you're ready to take a shot. Fingers are already on the button that's also used to capture the shot. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm kind of shrugging right now, but okay, fine, maybe.
Button is very fast and very reliable, so I'm a fan of that. And just the whole phone is, of course, very easy and comfortable to hold because it's so narrow, because 21 by 9. But speaking of 21 by 9, let's talk about this screen. This phone has a 6.5-inch 4K 120 hertz display right off the bat. Jesus. In the settings, you can switch between the super smooth 120 hertz or just normal 60 hertz, but you actually cannot adjust the screen resolution at all. It is always locked at 4K, which is a little bit crazy. I mean, I get that it's an enthusiast phone, and only an enthusiast would want to toggle their phone to 4K sometimes to, watch a 4K YouTube video. Or a movie or something. But this is just 4K all the time. This is full-on maximum enthusiast if you literally can't turn it off. No 1080, no 1440, it's locked. I'm actually kind of surprised they do let you turn off 120 hertz. I don't know, maybe.
Now, I'll say, and man, this is going to be a long video because my video right now is 21 minutes long, but his video, we're only at 4 minutes of 13. Yes, is 4K on a mobile device a bit excessive? I think it is, but at the same time, sometimes I look at these at situations like this where if the technology exists, why do we not just go ahead and implement it? Now, for cost reasons, I could see, okay, a 4K panel compared to a 1080 panel, it's probably more expensive. Also, with those additional pixels, you're now concerned about battery life of the phone. So why does that even matter? I mean, also, not battery life does matter, but if I were making the phone, I'd say, well, I don't want to sacrifice battery life for individuals looking at a, maybe 6.5-inch screen. They're not going to notice the difference between 4K and 1080p. Most won't. I don't know if I could. In fact, I don't know if I've seen true 4K anything. But I feel like if manufacturers, don't push forward when it comes to things like that, yeah, we end up getting stuck. And in his previous video, he talked about how excited he was, like when he remembered about the fact, when he remembered he reviewed his first 4K phone, and it happened to be a Sony, and it wasn't the one in the last video that I'm referencing. He was talking about something he referenced in the previous video. Hence, this isn't new. It's not even new technology. It's been around for a while. It's just manufacturers choose when they want to implement stuff, and I'm sure they do cost analysis and things like that. But I'm sure at some point somebody would have said a 1080 screen is for enthusiasts, and in 2022 it's definitely not. And I'm happy that we have moved past or moved on to that, and then some have moved past that. But I remember when I got my first full HD screen, I believe it was on a Google Pixel, and I was coming from one of the previous Sonys, and that Sony had a 720p screen, and man, could you see the difference. So 1080p for me on a phone is more than enough. Honestly, 1080p on a television is more than enough. But of course, we have a lot of 4K TVs for sale right now anyway. But yeah, definitely. Okay, the dedicated shutter button, cool. 4K panel, even though it's not new technology, the fact that it's 4K and 120, cool. I mean, yeah, there might be other phones that are comparable. I really don't know, but is it enthusiast level? Maybe. Again, I'm shrugging my shoulders over here.
They'll remove that option in the Mark IV. The display itself, though, it looks pretty great, as you might expect. Sony has this 10-bit creator mode. It's had it before. And it's also a highly adjustable white balance to tune this OLED display to look exactly how you'd want. I'd expect nothing less here. But of course, the downside to having a 21 by 9 display is there are still some apps that aren't perfectly optimized for it. And honestly, probably never will be. That includes Instagram stories and TikTok. You know, the normie apps most everyday people use. They have black bars at the top and the bottom because most phones aren't this crazy tall aspect ratio. But that's fine. This is an enthusiast phone. And so people who are willing to make that sacrifice to have a nice, narrow, taller, better looking display with cinema videos, they'll be fine with that. Couple apps not working, no big deal. This is going to be great with 21:9 stuff. The one thing you can't get around though is having a display at 4K, 120 hertz all the time. Yeah, it eats into battery life pretty hard. So this phone has a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, which is solid, but that's not gigantic. But the rate that you can chew through battery at high brightness, 4K, 120 hertz, is pretty high. So I'd recommend you have one of those enthusiast battery banks somewhere near you if you plan on getting a whole day past about 4 hours.
And I get he's probably being a little sarcastic, but plenty of people have freaking battery packs that aren't like, what? Yeah, I mean, now I'm just laughing. I mean, I've seen this video quite a few times too. It's been a little while since I watched it. But, I mean, I guess, yeah, if you're shooting video and stuff all day, or if you're just a power user, maybe you do have a couple of spare USB battery packs just lying around, or that you carry with you all the time. But enthusiast okay. I mean, yeah, I just think it's comical.
Heavy screen on time away from your charger. The brick included does get you 30-watt fast charging, and it does have Qi wireless charging as well. But yeah, if there is a weak point of this hyper enthusiast phone, it's definitely that. So you've got your crazy enthusiast hardware with the headphone jack and the notification LED. You've got your crazy enthusiast screen, 4K. You've got your enthusiast specs, of course. You got Snapdragon 888, 12 gigs of RAM, and the works are all here. But what's it like?
Wait, but what? Like those last two things they just kind of threw in there, the Snapdragon 888 and 12 gigs of RAM. I'm pretty sure those are specs on Samsung Galaxy phones. Yeah, I'm not going to take the time to look it up, and I probably should, especially when making something like this. But the Snapdragon 888 is not, and it's a flagship level chip. And as of right now, it is no longer the most recent one, but not at all is that enthusiast. It's a flagship level one, cool. And yeah, I'm 99.99% sure that the Galaxy S21 Plus or Ultra or whatever you want to call it, had 12 gigs of RAM, because I think the following year, which was this year, they reduced those back down to 8 or something. But yeah, definitely not enthusiast. High end, yes. Flagship, yes. Enthusiast, nah.
To actually use this phone with such crazy hardware? You guessed it, it's riddled with quirks and features. I'd feel like Doug DeMuro trying to point all of these out. There's a lot going on. Now,
choosing T-Mobile is like paying for this, but getting that. And with our new price lock guarantee, you won't need to...
Features, I'd feel like Doug DeMuro trying to point all of these out. There's a lot going on. Now, Sony software I actually think overall is pretty nice. Mostly because, let's be real, they don't try to do too much aesthetically. It's like if you took near stock Android 11 and then just plugged a bunch of features into it that work with Sony's hardware. I mean, that's what an enthusiast like me wants. So you've got your near stock...
No. No. Like, there's nothing wrong with the stock Android. And by that logic, you'd almost have to say all Pixel users are enthusiasts. But stock Android it's simple versus and the only other company I want to really compare it to now is Samsung. Their whole One UI, in my opinion, is ugly. It used to be a lot worse, and I don't know if it's always been called One UI, but I used to hate Samsung phones. I can tolerate them now, but I definitely will say I don't like them when I compare them to a Sony or a Pixel, or taking that Samsung now and then throwing a different launcher on there. But I don't think enthusiasts really care. They do, but I don't think stock Android is an enthusiast level feature.
Looking quick settings and the Google Discover feed next to your home screens, even the default Google search box at the very bottom of your home screen for reachability. But then in the settings, like I've said, you have a ton of display customization. You have always on display controls, reverse wireless charging toggle, lots of battery care features to help you reduce the amount of time your battery spends at full 100% charge to prolong the life of your phone. And then
Now, even with that, and I'm pulling stuff in from other videos he's made, and I get, you make a video, you talk about some stuff, you know, move on with life, whatever. But that battery care stuff is stuff that he later praised Apple for. I think Apple and Samsung, I believe, because actually no, it might have been Google and Samsung. I don't know. One of the bigger companies when it comes to cell phone manufacturers. And he's like, oh yeah, it's nice that they now have this feature that they're able to um, charge more efficiently, and then, you know, not stay at 100%. Because yeah, the whole purpose of that other video he made was to talk about how well, I think the question was, is fast charging dangerous or bad for the battery? And if I remember, I'll be sure to link that video down below. But yeah, like it's he's naming good features that the phone has, and then later, you know, he'll make a video about um, features that other phones have just recently adopted, and praise them as if they're, you know, oh my god, these, you know, these are new things, but Sony's doing it, but he's calling it an enthusiast here, but then happy that this other company finally adopted it. And it's just interesting, you know, it is. But again, not an enthusiast level feature, but it is good design and good engineering on Sony's behalf to understand, hey, maybe we should think about these things. Maybe we should implement them. And given the fact that batteries are no longer just user replaceable the way they used to be, a feature like this is just good design. Hey, let's prolong the life of this battery because you, average user, even enthusiast level user, probably aren't going to want to or know how to disassemble your phone to remove the battery to swap it out.
Favorite Sony editions is called SideSense. So Sony fans, stop me if you've heard this before, but it puts this little bar over here to the side of your screen. You can double tap that bar anytime you want to bring up a quick app launcher, which you can customize with whatever 8 apps you want, or just bring up the whole list, hilariously. And then you can slide up on that bar anytime you want to open multitasking, which is pretty sweet on that extra tall 21:9 display. I assume if you're a true enthusiast, you're doing this all the time and you've got your favorite app pairs queued up so you can.
And I'm currently looking at my Samsung Galaxy S22 Plus. And I don't know what Samsung calls it, but there's a sidebar on this phone too. Like it's similar. It's not exactly the same thing that Sony has, where it's kind of like a whole little mini screen, but there's a side panel where I can swipe out, and now I have all my little quick apps or whatever. And I don't know if I can if I can adjust this or whatever, but it's a similar concept, not exactly the same, but just a feature of, hey, these phones are getting too big, and that's across the board. So what can we do to try to make it so it's more close to being one hand usable? But again, Samsung does their own thing. I don't know if Apple is doing something similar, but yeah, it's just a way to say, hey, these phones are too big. What can we do to attempt to make them a little more easy for somebody to use with either smaller hands or just to use with one hand in general?
And launch them both at the same time with a single touch. And you can also launch one-handed mode from here, which makes sense if you can't quite reach the top of this phone. Honestly, it's so tall that the top corners can be a little annoying to reach even with big hands. So you can customize the position of this bar, the size, the transparency level, the sensitivity, every little thing, dial it to your heart's content, and it's all over here in this little sidebar that's super reachable wherever you want to put it. Well done, Sony. This phone has really good, strong haptics, which is good to see always. And there's also Dualshock 4 support, so you can connect a Sony PS4 controller to this phone to play certain games if you're into that. I imagine they're building in a DualSense 5 support. It doesn't work with the PS5 controller yet, but that would be cool. But you want to know the worst part of the software though? For some reason, and this annoyed me a lot, this phone has the slowest auto rotate I have ever witnessed in a modern smartphone. Yeah, that's not a bug. It's that slow every single time. I don't know why. I feel like this is either I guess it is a bug and they can fix it with software. But yeah, that was extremely annoying. Now, an enthusiast phone wouldn't be complete without some enthusiast cameras. And boy, does Sony have that on lock here. Literally, there is no basic Android camera app. As soon as you squeeze that shutter or double tap the power button or just hit the camera icon, whatever you like, you're thrown immediately into Sony's advanced camera app. Now, they do give you a basic mode, in that camera app, which is funny. And that lets you switch to video mode and toggle between the ultra wide, the standard, and 2 different telephoto focal lengths. But then, of course, you can just go straight from basic mode into basically a full-on Sony alpha camera with programmable auto modes and manual modes and 20 FPS burst shutter and sliders for your shutter speed and ISO and focus and all that. It's great. But did you catch one little thing I just said there? 2 telephoto focal lengths, but there's only 1 telephoto camera on the back of the phone. So how are there 2 telephoto focal lengths? Well, it turns out, quietly, for their hyper enthusiast phone, Sony's dropped variable optical zoom on a single telephoto camera. So this horizontally oriented telephoto camera has glass inside that moves to change the focal length optically instead of digitally. So
All right, so yeah, I'll concede with that one. Yeah, that's a bit much for a phone. It's nice to have, and I'm looking at my Xperia 5 Mark III right now, and I know every time I activate the camera, let me see if you can hear it. And you probably couldn't, but yeah, it moves. There's something in there. Yeah, the lens, I guess, or however you would describe it, is actually moving. Is that a bit much? Yes. So yes, it is.
in the software, you can snap these between 70 millimeters and 105 millimeters. These focal lengths are both shot by that same sensor. It's pretty intense. Now, Sony won't tell me exactly how they're doing this. I guess it's a secret, but I imagine there are probably some sort of magnets involved moving the glass around. The best I can show is this animation on Sony's YouTube channel, one of their videos. But this animation actually shows several different internal lens positions, which kind of confused me because there's only 2 focal lengths. So I don't know what this is about or how accurate this visualization is, but you get the idea. It's moving glass inside the phone to give you 2 different zooms. And so the result is kind of amazing. You now have 2 different focal lengths of telephoto in one sensor. You have 70 and you have 105, and you can digital zoom between them, but you can also just snap between them back and forth for optical zoom to match sharpness. That's pretty cool. The brutal part, though, is even after all of that technical wizardry, the photo quality really isn't that great. Like, I'd like to think I know what I'm doing, and I've shot with plenty of cameras, plenty of Sony Alpha cameras, and other Sony phones, but it's just never actually looked that great, despite all the incredible, innovative manual control. The shutter is very fast, autofocus is incredibly fast. I never miss a shot with the dedicated shutter button, it's awesome. But the actual shot I get, pretty soft, a little bit muted colors, a little noisy sometimes, pretty meh. So I was hoping for better there. So the best thing I get out of this phone's camera system really is just it's a technical marvel and it's really cool to appreciate. And I have hope for the future of smartphones with optical zoom, but I also don't want to get my hopes up because, well, if you remember what Samsung did with dual aperture in the Galaxy S9, it was kind of just like this. It wasn't smoothly adjusting aperture between a range, but you could snap between 2 different apertures on the same camera lens with a moving lens. That was in the Samsung Galaxy S9, and then the next year it was gone. And it never showed up again. And it would have been really useful in some of their later years. Galaxy S20 having such a thin plane of focus, having dual aperture could make a bigger range of focus if you shut down the aperture a little bit, but they didn't do it anymore. So I see that, and then I think of Sony's, where now you're snapping between focal lengths, and it's cool, and I hope it advances, but there's no guarantees. So we'll cross our fingers for that. But overall, sheesh, this phone is a lot. It's got a camera I've never seen before. It's got a screen I've never seen before. It's got a ton of features. There's just a lot going on. And so if you care about smartphones at all, this is a really exciting phone. And aside from the awful auto rotate, I thoroughly enjoyed using it. Now, would I recommend it? Honestly, probably almost no one should actually buy this phone. I mean, it is $1,200. That's how much I get it for. It's on B&H right now. You can get a Galaxy S21 Ultra for that price, which would have better battery, faster charging, better cameras, better software with more updates, and just overall a bit more versatile. So you have to really want this. But if you are that enthusiast, or if you're into Sony headphones, or Sony PS5, or Sony I don't know, Bravia TVs or the other stuff they make, then you might consider this one too. So there you have it. That's been it. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting perspective on it. I mean, I feel with the versatility of Android, the whole point of it is for whatever the vendor makes, for it to not be identical to what somebody else does. So does it run stock Android or close to it? Absolutely. Does it have some nice hardware that Android is then able to run on? Absolutely. Has Sony put on its own little tweaks so that way it isn't just purely stock Android and not different from, and so it is different from what you would get from Google directly. Absolutely. Is it Samsung's One UI? No. So I feel like when it comes to it being an enthusiast phone, what really I'm like, okay, the dedicated shutter button, cool. I'll just say the camera system in general. Boom, there you go. The other things you mentioned, not so sure. But what really does it, or why I would say, yeah, you have to be a very specific person to want to get this, is the price. Because you do start looking at, okay, well, for that amount of money, what else could I potentially get? So if you want to stay in the Android ecosystem, yes, everything that he said the Galaxy 21 or 22 Ultra, whatever it was, when this phone came out. Yeah, at that point, you're looking at something that probably is a better overall purchase, unless you just don't like One UI. Or yeah, you might be into those other things, which maybe the phone integrates nicely into the rest of the Sony ecosystem, which I hate the fact that we have to worry about which ecosystem you're in right now. But all in all, if it were cheaper, which, a few months after initial release, you're able to find it for a lot less. I'm not going to say nothing because that's not true. But I think the last time I looked online, which was months ago at this point, it was going for $699. Now, when was it originally released? Sometime in 2021. So we're talking the beginning of 2022. It's, not half off, but close to it if you're willing to buy like an open box something. But yeah, they could reevaluate their pricing structure. They could reevaluate their marketing, their agreements with carriers, their overall software support. I mean, yeah, these are things that definitely could make the phone more readily available. But overall, my opinion, which as I sit with 8 subscribers, is it's not an enthusiast phone. It's just a good phone that has features that we either once adored or two could definitely see the industry going that way. And once the mainstream adopts it, of course, then it's no longer an enthusiast design. But that battery video that he made, he pointed out the good things that whatever companies he was talking about were doing, and I was like, Sony does all that already. Not and then I come back to this video, so not an enthusiast thing, just something that other companies weren't so quickly to adopt. But anyway, there's his information right there, because this is his video. I'm just talking about it, and until the next one.